Hello, I'm Marcus Railton, and this is the ScotsCare podcast. ScotsCare is the only charity dedicated to helping disadvantaged Scots in London through a range of support, including mental health therapy, financial grants, advocacy, sheltered housing for older Scots, job coaching, social events, befriending, and support for children and families. The charity's been running for 400 years to help break the cycle of poverty experienced by some Scots in London. In this series of the ScotsCare podcast, I'll be chatting to celebrities and supporters of the charity that have forged a life often away from Scotland and about the ups and downs that can bring. With me today is a Scot from Fife. He's 39 years old and has been writing the hugely successful Ryan Drake spy thriller novels for over a decade. In recent years, he's also become a YouTube celebrity with extremely clever film and TV reviews that have garnered him nearly 1.5 million YouTube subscribers. My guest today is Will Jordan.
ScotsCare.
Hi, Will.
Hello.
Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate you doing the ScotsCare podcast.
No problem at all, man. Happy to join you.
How does your day start? Is there a school run for you?
Yeah, although my wife usually does it, so I get to focus on doing work. So yeah, my day starts pretty early because we've got two greyhounds that usually decide to wake up at like 6 a.m. or something. So they kind of need taken out for walks and all that stuff. It's the usual stuff.
Oh, literally, you got greyhounds. I thought you were referring to your kids as greyhounds.
No, I do. We do have actual greyhounds that, they used to be racing dogs and then we adopted them. Like there's a lot of them that need rehomed after they finish their racing careers. So we got a couple.
Yeah, do you know what? I've read that the greyhounds don't get treated very well after their racing careers are over.
No, they don't. It's better now, at least, because there's a bit of a system for putting them up to adoption places, and then they can find like homes as family pets. But I think, go back 20, 30 years when their racing careers were over, it was pretty much taken out behind the shed, and that was it for them. They're doing better now, and they make great pets. Like we've got, like I say, a couple of them, and they're just very, very chill animals. And
what age are your kids?
They are 9 and 12.
Oh, almost the exact same as mine. My older boy Noah is 13, and I've got a younger boy Rafe, who's 9, and I've got a daughter who's 4. So there's a bit of gap. But when it's interesting because I always refer to my boys as wild dogs. So when you said the greyhounds, I thought, yes, that's right. They're wild. They're dealing with them. Yeah. So my day starts with this school run as well. Do your kids get what you do for a living? Because that's going to be interesting playground chatter. What does your dad do? He's a spy novelist and YouTuber.
That's it. Yeah, I think my eldest is at that age now because he's in high school where it's like, oh, it's a bit embarrassing that my dad does this stuff. So I don't think he really mentions it, and that's fair enough.
You're not American and you don't scream "Hi guys" and play hide and seek on YouTube. So it kind of puts you in a niche, doesn't it?
That is true, yeah. And I always imagined like, oh, I get to be a YouTuber. My son's going to be well impressed by that, and he's just like, nah, you're too old, Dad. You're not cool.
Well, that if you're past 24, I think that's the problem, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not streaming myself playing Fortnite or whatever else. So I'm just not cool, unfortunately.
My son Rafe I can't get my head around that. He watches a lot of other people playing games, which I just, I don't want to be a dinosaur. I want to get into his head, but I just don't get that. I don't get he's doing that. Yeah.
I think entertainment for kids now is boiling down to the lowest common denominator. That's why you get TikTok videos that are like 15 seconds long, and that's it. They just scroll through them, one after the other.
That. I genuinely worry about Noah, he's a smart kid, but sometimes his attention span is just like if you don't catch him like that, it's gone. It's
happening to all of them, man. I mean, I think what they're producing is like 15-second summaries of movies. So you don't even need to watch them. It's like they'll explain the entire story to you in like 15, 20 seconds. And that's it. It's like, asking someone to invest a couple of hours to watch a really entertaining film is like too much now.
It's strange that, I think, when was it? I can't remember the last time Scotland played England at football. And I said to Noah, come on, we'll sit down and watch it because he was born in just outside London. And so he kind of sees himself as English, but wants to be Scottish. So we thought, we'll sit down and watch this. And he honestly, he lasted about 15 minutes. And then I looked over and his phone was out and it was, yeah. but my kids don't think, I don't think they get what I do for a living, and they certainly don't think I'm cool. And we had Duncan Powell on the podcast, and he's in the new series of the Andor, the Star Wars thing.
Oh yeah.
He plays Sergeant Melshi in it. And I said to the boys, I said, look, I'm interviewing Sergeant Melshi. Do you know who he is? Yeah, the guy from Rogue One, the guy from. And for about 15 seconds, they were impressed. And then it kind of tipped over into, but why is he talking to you? You know, it was like dripping in disdain, you know.
1 minute you're up, the next you're down. Yeah.
Let's talk about your novels, because are you even 40 yet? You're a bit of a powerhouse with the writing, aren't you?
I am not quite 40 yet, so I'm still clinging on to my 30s for now. I'm enjoying every day of it.
How many Ryan Drake novels are there? 10?
Yes. No, sorry. There are 9 Ryan Drake novels and then my new one, which is a standalone. But yeah, I got my first Drake novel published, it was 10 years ago, actually, 10 years ago in June. And so, yeah, I was only, 28? I think when I got my first publishing deal. So I was pretty lucky. You know, a lot of people have a longer road to getting published, but mine was fairly easy.
Did you get a lot of rejection before then, or were you lucky off the bat?
I mean, I got a few rejections from agents and then found one fairly quick. But the book that we submitted, like my very first one, that ultimately didn't get published, which was a bit of a blow. But I went back to the drawing board, you know, and figured out the things which worked about it, the things which didn't, and wrote Redemption, which is my, you know, the first one that actually got a publishing deal. And that was great. That was the start of the journey for me, I suppose. It's
a lot of work though, isn't it? If you've done 100,000 words or more, and they say, we'll like your style, but not this book, can you go and do as another 100,000 words?
Yeah, that is a tough one. It's like, hey, guess what? You've just wasted a year doing this.
Yes. It's difficult not to think of it that way, isn't it?
Like I say, I was lucky. You know, some authors, they produce like, you know, 5-6 books before they get published, and yeah, that must be soul destroying. But
yeah, I read that about Stephen King. I think he did that. He wrote a whole lot of books before anything got published at all. Yeah,
but it's weird. Like back then, I think when you're so hungry to try and get that step, you know, to take that next step, you've got that determination. The thought of doing it now and writing a book that doesn't get published is like, oh my God, I just couldn't go through that at this point in my life. But back then it's different.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, it's when you got kids and, you know, you get the mortgage and stuff. It's, you know, you have to, I don't know, what's the best word? Compromise, I suppose. Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah. It was a hectic time back then because I did have one kid already and I was working full time. And so I was having to, you know, do the writing in the evening. You know, when other people were just vegging out watching TV, I was working. But yeah, that's the commitment I suppose you have to put in, and you have to find the time somehow. Yeah.
I'm always fascinated. I asked quite a lot of the guests how the work, and Christopher Brookmeyer, he was saying he'll write every day. There's hardly a day he doesn't write. And then I was talking to Greg Kane of Hue and Cry, and he says if he gets up and he doesn't feel it, he won't go into the studio because he knows he can't sit there for 8 or 9 hours just kind of flagellating himself, you know, and making himself feel crap about it. And how do you have a daily word count? Do you have to go in and do it?
Yeah, you have to. The best way I can describe it is just like putting in the grind. And for me, I have to keep like a pretty fast pace of work when I'm doing a book, because if I was one of those writers who just leaves it for, you know, a couple of days, you know, I'm not quite feeling it right now, I'll come back to it in a while. You know, a couple of days turns into a week, which can turn into a month. And before you know it, like the project's just dead. Yeah. And so I just never allow that to happen when I'm writing a book. It's really every day. Might take one day off per week or whatever, but I don't really have a word count as such. It's not like, oh, I have to do 5,000 words per day or whatever it might be. It's just whatever feels like, you know, a satisfactory amount. And, you know, sometimes the writing comes easy. Sometimes it's more difficult. You might just manage to get a couple of pages done, or you might get 10 pages. You know, you just never quite know how creative you're going to feel or how easy the scene's going to be. But yeah, like I definitely try to make hay while the sun shines. And if I'm on a roll, yeah, I'll just keep going until like late at night, you know.
And how much time do you spend in research? Because I know you know, by your own admission, you don't have a military background. So I expect there's always something at the back of your mind saying, I don't want to get caught out, or I don't want to look an arse here by getting something wrong.
You do your best. I mean, I think that's, I guess, all that people can ask from you. You're inevitably going to get things wrong because, like you say, if you're not from a military background, there's just going to be little details that they know that you can't get from just reading. But I try my best with it, and I'll do some preliminary research before I start my book, so I've got a general outline of the plot, and I can check to make sure the things I'm describing are somewhat feasible. And then as I go through, I'll just find out the things that I need to support a particular scene. Like if I'm writing about a particular place or a weapon or a piece of equipment or whatever, like, okay, I'll go and research that as I do it, just so I can kind of describe how it functions or whatever.
For a long time, you were holding down a full-time job, writing in the evening, and you had and at this point you had one child, and then you are now a full-time writer, full-time YouTuber, and we'll come on to the YouTube stuff in a bit because that's fascinating and I love it. But even at this point, when you were successful, was it still a bit of a leap of faith to say, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to put food on the table for the family, and I'm not going to take the paycheck from the company anymore and be a full-time writer?
It was, yeah. And to be honest with you, I didn't really leave like a paid employment until my YouTube career took off, because the reality of being a writer is that you don't make a huge amount of money from it. You know, if you become the next J.K. Rowling or Stephen King, yeah, okay, you're going to be a millionaire. But like for every one of them, there's thousands, if not tens of thousands of authors who just are barely getting by, or don't even make enough money. They have to supplement it with employment. And for me, that was kind of the situation I was in, at least in the early stage of my writing career. You know, you get that first advance, you know, you get your first publishing deal and you think, that's it, I'm on the road to fame and success. And it doesn't necessarily work like that. You know, that you have to get your books out there. They have to start selling enough copies that you make back your advance, and then you actually start getting royalty payments off it. And all of that stuff takes time. And yeah, like I say, it wasn't until I really had my YouTube channel take off that I thought, right, I can't do 3 different jobs simultaneously. I need to quit. And that's what got me to where I am now, I suppose.
Now, the YouTube channel is called The Critical Drinker, and it's your kind of alter ego. And as we sit here today, I think you're just shy of 1.5 million subscribers. But for anyone listening who doesn't know, can you kind of give us a précis of who the Critical Drinker is and what he does?
So he's kind of like my alter ego in the sense that he's a drunken, belligerent Scottish guy who critiques movies and breaks down the writing of them, and you know, has a bit of a laugh doing it. And I guess the thing I find enjoyable about it is that contrast of what I hope is pretty intelligent criticism and story breakdowns, you know, versus a guy who makes crude jokes and like laughs and talks about, you know, drinking toilet duck and stuff on a night out. And it's a good, fun way of presenting what I do. You know, I think if you're going to get into analysis of media and how writing works, it can be a bit dry and a bit boring for some people. And so this is just a way of making it more fun and engaging, and it makes it more fun for me to do. And so that's kind of how The Critical Drinker took off. And damn, yeah, once I started doing it, it just really exploded.
Yeah, the writing, Will, is so clever and articulate and laugh out loud funny. And I think whereas you get things which you watch and you go, well, there's a lot of swearing in it. And sometimes you swear, but it's so nuanced or perfectly timed that it is so really effective. But what I like about it, what I appreciate about it is I think it's very Scottish, because I think there's loads of sarcasm. There's loads of Scottish sarcasm in it. That's
what I tried to bring in. And it's funny because I had no idea whether Americans would even understand what I was saying, never mind get the humor and stuff, but they seem to absolutely love it, and great. But yeah, there is something unique about that Scottish sense of humor where we do use sarcasm and we do use swearing to just punctuate and flavor our language. And I think it's, a well-placed swear word is just like the seasoning on the dish that you prepared for people. So I think it's great to be able to do that. You know, again, just not taking it too seriously, you know, having a bit of fun with it. I think it works really well.
And I think that's what I think generally that's a Scottish thing, that you have to be grounded. I don't know if you've seen it. I watched an interview with Gerard Butler recently, and he was talking about his success in going back to Saltcoats in Ayrshire and meeting up with his old pals. And they said to him, Jerry, I want you to know that despite all this fame, you've not changed a bit. You're still a dick.
Yeah.
And I thought that's exactly what they would say to you when you went home as a multimillionaire to your hometown in Scotland.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I think there's that difference, I guess, because, you make it in places like America and you're almost like elevated to a different level of being almost. Whereas over here, yeah, you're still that same guy that people have known their whole lives. And yeah, like it's not changed how I get on with my friends or family or anything like that. It's so that's good. It keeps me grounded, I suppose.
Yeah, what I like about watching, apart from just enjoying your interviews, what I like about watching the American people interview is that they are so in awe of your bluntness. And I find it odd because Americans are this kind of odd, they can be a slightly insular nation. They've got guns and violence and pornography, and yet they're blown away by your directness.
It's a strange one. Yeah, it's a strange contradiction. I've always noticed in America that they're unusually formal with their politeness, which is kind of not what you'd expect. But, something as simple as like someone holds a door open for you and you say thanks. Like that would be it for us. But like then they usually say, oh, you're welcome. On top of that, it's just like an extra layer of formality that you just wouldn't expect. And so, yeah man, I don't know. They
have a nice day. And how much would you like to tip?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember I'm not a mean Scotsman. I don't want to start that stereotype, but I remember buying a cup of coffee in New York from a kind of independent Starbucks-alike type place. And, you pay on the iPad. And at the end of it, it was like, there was a screen that says, how much would you like to tip? 25%, 35%. I thought, whoa, I've not had any real service here. I've just ordered a takeaway coffee. It's crazy.
It's kind of like that, I've been at bars and stuff in America, and literally all they've done is like open the lid on a bottle of beer for me, and it's like you're kind of meant to tip them. And I just think, yeah, I would tip waiting staff in a restaurant, obviously, because they have to put in the work. But like somebody who's just opened a beer for me, it's like, this is a bit much. But again, it's the culture, and like they don't make much money. They have to have tips just to get by. So yeah, I guess that's what you have to do. It's just what you expected.
ScotsCare, helping to break the cycle of deprivation for Scots in London.
Do you ever self-censor what you say in your YouTube channel? Do you ever think, I've gone too far, and then recut it or rewrite it?
Occasionally, YouTube is getting a little bit more tight with things. One of the ones that was best known, because during the pandemic, you really couldn't talk about coronavirus. And like the moment you said that word, there was a danger that your channel was going to get, or at least your video would get demonetized, or it would get, deranked or something, so people wouldn't see it as much. And that's where I came up with the unspecified virus of unknown origin. And just it became like a pun, but then people like really took to it, and they're like, "Yeah, it's quite funny." They knew exactly why I was doing that, and so yeah, those are examples. And there's certain subjects that I'm not gonna go into. Like I'm not gonna go into politics or anything like that with my channel, and I think people appreciate that because there's enough people spouting off their political beliefs online. They don't need me adding to the mix. So yeah, I just try to focus on the entertainment side of things.
Yeah, we are. I appreciate that. It's a kind of moment of levity in a world gone mad watching your stuff, and we're surrounded by culture wars and online noise. And is that something you worry about for your kids? Do you try and monitor their screen time? And I check my son Noah's phone, and sometimes I feel as if it's an invasion of his privacy, but other times I want to know what he's looking at.
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and with my youngest, like he's less interested in like pop culture and stuff, so I don't really have to worry about him. He's just looking for like videos of spaceships or like cars or whatever. He's onto that. But with my older son, I suppose he's at that age where he's starting to become more aware of these things. And you kind of just you hope that they get a balanced view of things, because I don't really want them to be swayed too far in either direction. Like they want to see arguments from both sides of things, and ultimately make up their own mind, and just be rational and level-headed. But yeah, we don't let him have any kind of social media as such, because we're all too aware of like you might say something online, just try to be edgy or whatever as a teenager, and 10 years down the line that tweet gets uncovered or whatever it might be, and like suddenly you're losing your job, and like that happens to people now. And it's a whole different world they're growing up in from what we came up in as kids.
Well, this is it. I think if I had to be held to account for what I said when I was 25, I would probably never work again in my life.
Yeah.
And, I think I read that there was a story about the cricketer, and he was said to, I can't remember whether it was a racist remark or a homophobic remark or something, but it was something stupid and ultimately forgivable, probably. And it kind of ruined his life for a while.
Yeah. They talk, I guess, sometimes about the online hate mobs and stuff, like when they cotton on to someone like that, like some kind of public figure who said something a little bit edgy or a little bit inappropriate in his younger days, and like they will just not stop until that person gets fired. Like you say, it's got the potential to ruin lives, and it's kind of a scary world, really.
It does. Well, let's talk about movies and TV. The last thing, it's lovely to have you here, because there's things I wanted to talk to you about and ask you about and see what you thought. And the last thing that I watched and loved was Succession, because every character was brilliantly despicable and made all that much better for me, because there's people like that actually exist. Did you like Succession?
I haven't seen Succession, unfortunately. So this is one of the problems of being like a movie critic and stuff, is that people are constantly asking you, well, what did you think about this movie? What do you think about this TV show? And sometimes you're like, I've never even watched it. And it's always unfortunate, but like there's only so many hours in the day for people like me to try and watch new content so that we can review it. And you sometimes have to be picky. And the sad reality is sometimes movies or shows get left behind. I think that's probably one of them. I heard that it's meant to be really good though.
It's great, and I don't think Brian Cox was really on my radar. And I always knew he played. He was in the Bourne series, and he played the original Hannibal Lecter.
Yes.
But I don't think he was really on my radar until this. And I actually went out and bought his autobiography because of Succession. And he's certainly no diplomat. And I couldn't decide if it was that he had a massive ego or that he's just got to the point in life when he doesn't give a monkeys.
It could be either one, yeah. He's got a bit of a reputation for playing villains. I've seen him do that in a lot of movies, and he plays them pretty well, yeah. He's a Dundonian, isn't he? Originally. Yeah. Aye.
Well, we can forgive him that.
Yeah, it's all right. But, we've all got our disabilities in life. But, he's a good actor. And, I've enjoyed him in a lot of things that he's been in. Yeah.
Talking about villains, and heroes, one of the videos you made that kind of stuck in my mind was the video you made about heroes, because I think we all need heroes. And when I was a kid, it was quite clear who and why the heroes were heroes. And I think for kids, it is quite simple. They save the world, they fly, they're Spider-Man, they have superpowers. And it's been kind of destroyed. And I think you put your finger on it. It's kind of been homogenized and wokeified and destroyed. And it's become awfully complicated just to be a hero.
This is one of the most horrible aspects of entertainment for me today, is the deconstruction of the traditional hero, where you've got these characters that we used to, I guess, look up to and thought were awesome as kids. And, instead of just bringing in a new generation of heroes and letting them retire gracefully, it's like they can't do it. They have to first humiliate them and break them down and try to imply that they were never that great to begin with. You need to enjoy our new heroes that are going to replace them, and it's a really crappy thing to do as a writer. It's really cheap and it's really manipulative, and it absolutely boils my blood when it happens. Like, I think we all suffered through films like The Last Jedi, where we saw like Luke Skywalker now just this sad, pathetic old man. What other ones that we've had? They're going to be doing it to Indiana Jones pretty soon, as far as I know. They're even doing it within, say, the Marvel movies, the heroes that we had 10 years ago, which the actors have kind of retired from their roles and they've got a new bunch coming in. Now you're starting to see that same breaking down of those characters. They're not they were more complex, that everyone's conflicted now. Everything's nihilistic. No one can really just aspire to being a hero and doing good things because they want to. It all has to be like, this weird conflicted world now. And I don't think it's a great thing for people. It's not that every character has to be black and white and strictly good or strictly evil, but there needs to be something at least for people to aspire to. And you're just not getting it anymore.
Well, on a very simple level, for me, it doesn't have to be that complicated. I want to talk to you about villains in a second, but when you talked about Luke Skywalker, I was listening to a podcast with Mark Hamill, and he said even he was aware when the Last Jedi script was sent to him, he didn't think this is the direction that Luke Skywalker would have gone in, but obviously went with it. But yeah, for him to become an embittered old man hiding was not the way of I don't want to get into a Star Wars conversation, but it's not the way of the Jedi. He would have fought to the end.
No, exactly, yeah. And I think it was just this really cynical effort to make him weak so that it could make their new character look strong. And, if that's what you're having to rely on to make your new character look good, then you are a terrible writer. And, that's what you see so much nowadays. They hire basically people who are useless, incompetent hacks who don't know how to tell a good story and craft good characters, but they get the job because I guess they say the right things or they have the right political alignment or whatever it is. And they're now entrusted with these great characters from previous generations of writers, and they absolutely butcher them.
Going on to villains, like I always kind of, when I was growing up, I kind of liked villains, but my son, Rafe, he always wants to be the villain. He wants to be the dark side when the boys play Star Wars. It's not because he's a bad kid, but sometimes villains are just a bit more interesting. And
they're more fun, aren't they? Because you don't have to worry about appealing to the right sensibilities with a villain. You don't have to worry about making them virtuous. They allow everyone to, I guess, indulge their inner dark side just a little bit.
Yeah. But I don't think they have to see the error of their ways. And I think that's the way it's changing, that they have to be kind of reborn in some way now, which is just boring.
I think what you get now is this weird attempt to redefine them as anti-heroes. Again, it plays into this sort of nihilistic view that there is no inherent good or evil or whatever, and that every character is just a grey sort of blob. One of the worst ones I've seen was when they had that Cruella movie last year, I think it was. And they're trying to recast Cruella de Vil as some cool, punky anti-hero character. It's a woman who wanted to murder puppies and turn them into coats from the original 101 Dalmatians. Yeah. You're not going to reform a character like that. I'm sorry. That's just an out and out bad person, but they're still trying to do this. And I don't understand why.
Do you think we'll come out of it? Do you think we're in this kind of loop and we'll find an equilibrium? I read an article in The Guardian the other day saying that the word gardening should be retired because it wasn't politically correct anymore. And I
honestly think there'll come a tipping point for most people, because I think everyone's got a certain degree of tolerance for this stuff. We all do, and it's you let little things slide because it's it's times are changing and certain things are not acceptable now. But I think when you get to that kind of level, where it's gardening is racist now, or timekeeping is racist, or math is racist, or this is sexist, or this is homophobic, that there comes a point where normal people just say, oh, fuck off. I've had enough of this garbage. I'm not going to listen to this anymore. And it's gone to the realms of parody now. And when it comes to working that, I always hate using the word woke in movies because it's overused. Just being sexism and racism is overused. So is that. But yeah, that trend in Hollywood, I think, is coming to an end now, because the more they try and do it in movies, the more it pushes audiences away. And it was small at first, but it's happening more and more. And, we had a movie like Top Gun Maverick, which shouldn't have succeeded by any standard of measure, a sequel to a film from 35 years ago, starring Tom Cruise, who's pushing 60. And yet people loved it because it didn't have any of that crap in it. It was just a good old-fashioned story of an aging hero coming back for one last mission, one last adventure. And it did crazy business. It's $1.4 billion it's made worldwide. It's Tom Cruise's biggest movie of all time.
I've not seen it yet. This is one that I want to go and see.
Go see it, because honestly, you'll love it. It's one of the few movies that I genuinely came out of the cinema just feeling great. I was I've just had a lot of fun there. It's been a great film. It wasn't trying to push any stupid message in. It wasn't trying to tell us that Maverick was bad because he's a straight white man or any of that stupid nonsense that divides people. It was just a good movie. And wow, I think it really sent shockwaves through the industry. I honestly think they did not expect it to do anywhere near that kind of business. And it's maybe making them rethink a little bit what they're doing. I know that studios like Warner Brothers are absolutely gutting their projects and their staff because they don't have the money to keep pushing these projects that they know are going to fail. The biggest example, and I feel bad for the people involved in this, but they had a Batgirl movie coming out.
That was shot in Glasgow. That was shot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went over to the set to visit the directors, and they're super nice guys. Like, they were just really enthusiastic to be making this film. It was like one of their first big movies after doing Bad Boys 3, and they'd done it. It was in the can. They were in post-production, and all of a sudden they just find out through news outlets, no less, that the film has been canned. It's not coming out, and it's going to be deleted, basically. And they even went into the servers on Warner Brothers, and all of their footage they'd shot had been removed, so they couldn't even rescue it that way.
What kind of figure do you put on that, Will? How much money would that have wasted?
That movie cost $90 million to make.
Wow.
Which
$90 million.
$90 million, which compared to a lot of movies nowadays, it's not that expensive, but $90 million is still $90 million. But the reason for cancelling it was, if they'd released it, they would have had to spend another $100 million advertising it. And the studio had decided, basically because it was filled with a lot of the kind of intersectional stuff, like the main character, Batgirl, had been recast as a black woman or black actress they'd found to play her. They knew it wasn't going to play well. And so they decided to cut their losses. And so it was easier to flush 90 million down the drain than 200 million, I suppose.
Wow. ScotsCare, supporting Scots away from home in London.
Well, let me ask you about something that I've kind of thought about a lot, about films that are kind of seen as problematic now, that probably weren't seen as problematic in the 80s or in the 90s. A film that I grew up with was The Breakfast Club. And I hear a lot about that. I Googled it the other day because I wanted to talk to you about it. And there's a lot of talk of cancelling it completely. And I get why people want it cancelled, because there's sexual harassment in it, there's bullying in it. But my worry is that, you can't delete the footage of The Breakfast Club. Surely you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is something there that makes that an iconic film, even though we can't tolerate the bad parts of it. But surely we can't get rid of something like that.
I think you judge movies by the standards of their time, and where do you stop with this stuff? And I'm trying to think of other examples throughout history where societies started destroying art and destroying books and things like that. It didn't end well, and I just hate this idea of this thing depicts stuff that we don't like or that's not considered acceptable now, therefore it has to cease to exist. You don't really have the right to do that. It's the same with old movies like Gone with the Wind. Obviously, that depicts, the South and the kind of slavery and stuff. It probably depicts its black characters in a not particularly good light by today's standards, but it's a piece of art that was made in a very different time. And I think most people would be sensible enough to recognize, this isn't how we live now, but this is what was made in the movie. This is how it was depicted. And you should just appreciate it for what it is. It's really, most of this stuff comes down to a very small minority of people who make it their business to be offended by everything, and can't stand the idea that people can enjoy stuff that they don't like. And so their solution is, it just has to be destroyed. It has to go. You don't have the same opinion as me. Well, you have to be cancelled somehow. I'll find something on you to get you cancelled. And silence you. This is the mentality, and it's a really dangerous one. And I hope that is something that gets consigned to the trash can of history soon enough.
This is what I hope we come out the other side of and start to see sense and start to have a balance in some way. Yeah. But listen, before we wrap it up, can I ask you just a couple of, since you're a film expert, and there's a couple of light questions I want to ask you, because the stuff that just baffles me.
Sure.
Liam Neeson. Do you think he knows he just makes the same movie over and over and over again?
Absolutely. Look, he's been around long enough, same with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He just himself in every single movie, but it makes a ton of money. And so that's why they do it.
Well, I was sitting looking for something, my wife Becky and I, on Netflix, and there was another Liam Neeson movie, and she said to me, "What's that about?" And I says, "Well, probably somebody's been kidnapped, and he's either an ex-spy or ex-mafia or something, and he has to go and rescue someone." It's just, he must forget what he's doing.
I don't know if there's a little bit of like midlife crisis to it, although I say midlife, he's pretty old now, but Liam Neeson was like this weird late bloomer as an action star. It's like he did Taken when he was, I don't know, pushing 50.
Yeah.
And it just, he was reborn as some weird, like over the hill action star that just started doing all these crazy, these crazy fight scenes and things.
Taken, I thought that was kind of like the template for everything that has been a Liam Neeson movie since, isn't it?
Basically, yeah.
And then,
but like I say, you get to that stage, maybe you just want an easy payday.
Yes. Well, why not? Yeah. And then my final one would be Bruce Willis. What happened to Bruce Willis? Because I love Die Hard, one of the best movies of all time. And we watched something recently, and it was like he wasn't even in the same movie. It was like they cut in Bruce Willis scenes. It was like he dialed it in.
That I think that's exactly what happened, because obviously we know now that he's got this kind of degenerative condition where he struggles to process things and remember lines, all that stuff. So he's retired from acting now, and it was obviously fun to meme on him for the last few years of his career, because it genuinely just seemed like he did not give a shit. He was just there to collect his paycheck. Probably appear in the film for about 10 minutes just so they could slap his face on the cover and say that, it's a Bruce Willis movie when it's not. We know now, like, he was having to perform in a limited capacity because he just couldn't do more than that, which, it's a real shame. But there it was. But, he'd been going down that road for quite some time, just doing lazy, small performances in low budget action movies just to make money.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I suppose as he gets older, these guys are harder to cast because, he isn't John McClane anymore, which is, I love, apart from the last one, I think. Yeah. There was one really terrible Die Hard, wasn't there? But the rest of them were great. There's
been a few, yeah. Basically, the first three were great. I know people take a dump on 2 sometimes, but I think Die Hard 2 was a really good action movie. Die Hard 4 was a bit weird, and he didn't really feel like John McClane anymore. And then when he did that final one, where it's in Russia or something, it was just like a cartoon, really.
Yeah, I don't think I got to the end of that. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Will Jordan, for being part of the ScotsCare podcast.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
ScotsCare, supporting London Scots with financial grants, welfare advice, counselling, sheltered housing, jobs coaching and family support.